Food is more than just what we eat. It's a reflection of the times we live in. When you look back at America's culinary past, you'll find dishes that seem unusual, even strange, by today's standard. Some came out of hard times, when families had to stretch every ingredient. Others were considered high-class delicacies, served proudly at dinner tables or church socials. They may seem shocking now, but in their day, these foods were staples of American life. Today, we're flipping through the old recipe box to uncover 10 old American foods that will shock you. 1. Tomato aspic. Picture a bright red gelatin mold, wobbling on a glass plate, packed with chopped celery, onions, or even shrimp. That was tomato aspic, a savory cousin of Jell-O that graced countless tables from the early 1900s through the 1960s. Hostesses loved it because it looked impressive, held its shape, and could be made ahead of time. At luncheons and Sunday gatherings, tomato aspic was considered a mark of elegance. But over time, palates shifted toward fresher salads, and the sight of vegetables trapped in jelly began to feel outdated. Today, it may draw puzzled looks, but for mid-century Americans, it was a badge of creativity in the kitchen. 2. Lard sandwiches. In the 1930s and 40s, before peanut butter was widespread and when butter was scarce, many families spread plain lard on bread. Sometimes they added a sprinkle of salt for flavor, or even sugar for children who craved something sweet. It was dense, filling, and most importantly, cheap. For working-class families during the Great Depression, this humble sandwich was a lifesaver. It might sound shocking now, but in kitchens where every calorie mattered, lard kept people going through long days of hard work. As the economy improved and other spreads became common, the lard sandwich quietly faded away, remembered mostly in stories from grandparents. 3. Mock turtle soup. Back in the 19th century, turtle soup was a fashionable dish, often served at banquets and fancy hotels. But real turtle meat was expensive and hard to find. The solution? Mock turtle soup, made from calf's head or organ meats, seasoned heavily to mimic the texture and flavor of turtle. It became a popular way for middle-class families to enjoy a taste of luxury without breaking the bank. Recipes passed down through cookbooks included everything from sherry wine to hard-boiled eggs for richness. By the mid-20th century, though, the idea of cooking with calf's head had lost its appeal, and mock turtle soup slowly vanished from American kitchens. 4. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Known by many names, but most famously as SOS in the military, this dish was a staple for soldiers during World War II. Thin strips of dried beef were stirred into a creamy white sauce, then poured generously over toasted bread. It wasn't fancy, but it was hearty, salty, and could be made in massive quantities. After the war, many veterans carried the recipe home, where it became a budget-friendly family meal. Diners often served it, too, bringing that familiar taste of military life to the public. Over time, as food choices expanded and dried beef became harder to find, cream chipped beef slipped quietly out of the mainstream. Still, for many, the sight of it brings back a rush of memory. 5. Calf's foot jelly. This old dish dates back to the 1800s, when cooks boiled calf hoofs for hours to extract natural gelatin. The liquid was strained, flavored, and set into a jelly that could be served sweet or savory. It was time-consuming, but it reflected an era when nothing in the kitchen went to waste. Families often flavored it with lemon, wine, or spices, turning a humble ingredient into a fancy-looking dessert. It was praised as nutritious, especially for the sick or elderly. But once powdered gelatin hit the market in the early 1900s, few wanted to spend all day boiling bones. Calf's foot jelly soon became a relic, living on only in the oldest cookbooks. 6. Dandelion greens. Long before supermarkets stocked fresh produce year-round, many families gathered their own greens from fields and yards. Dandelion leaves were free, abundant, and packed with vitamins after a long winter of limited food. They could be boiled, sautéed with bacon, or tossed in a simple vinegar dressing. For farm families and immigrants alike, dandelion greens represented resourcefulness. They turned what many people saw as weeds into a nourishing meal. Over time, as grocery stores expanded, these wild greens fell out of favor. Today, they're making a small comeback in health food circles, but for many Americans, they remain tied to memories of thrift and tradition. 7. Mock banana salad. There was a time when bananas were considered exotic in much of America. Shipping was unreliable, and refrigeration wasn't widespread, so they weren't always available. In their place, cooks invented mock banana salad, often using boiled carrots meshed with banana extract or sugar to imitate the flavor. It may sound odd, but families served it proudly, especially at church gatherings and school lunches. It was a way to bring a taste of the tropics to the table, even if the real fruit wasn't around. Once bananas became cheap and easy to buy in every grocery store, the mock version quickly disappeared. 8. Corn dodgers. Corn dodgers were rough, rustic cakes made from cornmeal, water, and a pinch of salt, fried or baked until firm. They were portable, filling, and long-lasting, making them ideal for pioneers, soldiers, and cowboys on the move. These little cakes show up in stories of the frontier and even in Civil War rations. They weren't glamorous, but they provided comfort on long journeys where fresh bread wasn't an option. As America moved away from frontier life, corn dodgers gave way to softer breads and cornbread, remembered mostly in old Southern kitchens and history books. 9. Prune whip. This airy dessert was a favorite in the early 20th century, especially among health-conscious homemakers. Cooked prunes were whipped with egg whites and sugar into a light, foamy pudding, often served chilled in glass dishes. It was both sweet and considered nutritious, an old-fashioned way of turning fruit into something elegant. For many children, prune whip was the dessert they grew up with at Sunday dinners or holiday gatherings. But as prunes became associated more with digestion than with treats, the dish lost its charm. Today, it's rarely seen outside vintage cookbooks, remembered mainly with a mix of fondness and curiosity. 10. Meat gelatin molds. If you've ever seen a mid-century cookbook, you've probably spotted one of these shimmering towers. Housewives suspended vegetables, tuna, eggs, or even frankfurters inside rings of savory gelatin. They weren't just food, they were a statement piece, meant to impress guests with both creativity and color. In the 1950s and 60s, gelatin molds were a sign of modernity, showing off the versatility of packaged gelatin. But by the 1970s, people began to prefer fresh salads and simpler dishes, leaving the gelatin molds to wobble off into history. Today, the idea of a quivering salad filled with meat may sound shocking, but for decades, it was the height of American entertaining. From large sandwiches to meat molds, these foods may shock us now, but each one carries a story about survival, celebration, or creativity. They remind us of a time when American kitchens looked very different, and when families made the most of what they had. If you enjoyed this trip through the recipe box of the past, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more nostalgic stories right here on Heritage USA. And tell us, which of these old American foods surprised you the most?